Good morning, everybody. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
We need to stop the generator back there. We need to request to stop it. So, anyway, some of you already heard about what I did in February, which was an adventure that a lot of people didn't believe in. People thought it was a little crazy, that I should not even attempt it. But one of the reasons had to do because of the distance for sure that I was going to do and the water crossing that I was supposed to do, but I was not able to do them. So anyway, the way and why I went to such a long distance is because, well, I take it back. If I go backward, last year, about a year and a half in February, I wanted to see how far I could fly on my own after having only 68 flights. I had 68 launches and I thought I'm going to try to see if I'm ready for the Icarus race. So I flew from New Mexico, Albuquerque, all the way to California, the Salton Sea, which is about 700 miles, unsupported. Nobody knew I was going to do that little trip. I started Facebook at that time. The only difference on that one is that versus the one I did here is that I was carrying a lot of weight because I was fully unsupported, and I was pretty much carrying 160 pounds on my back at launch. The extra fuel, spare part, food, cooktop, water, extra oil.
What's 160 pounds in modern money?
Oh, sorry, about 80.
80 kilos?
Yeah, 80 kilo. Are you in pound here or you are in kilo? Both. So about 80 kilo, which was a lot. I wanted to see if I was able to do it. Will I do it again? Probably not. It's just too much. It's just too much, and it's not too much when you fly. When you fly, well, I guess the motor, the wing carries everything, but it's bulky, it's heavy, and you don't want to fail a launch. When you fail a launch with that much weight and you are by yourself, guess what? First of all, you want to take the motor down because it's too heavy. So after I went to do the Icarus race in Africa, I had a little issues back there. I didn't fly very far. I had a hole in my piston, so the trip was over. But prior that African trip, the Icarus race, I thought I wanted to do a big long trip. I didn't talk to anybody about it. Only a few, maybe like 10 people knew about it until it came public. But my idea was to try to find sponsors to help me with the trip. One way or the other, I was going to do it. It was not going to be an issue because it was not going to be too much. I had the wing, I had the motor, I had somebody that will come as a ground crew. The issue was going to be the gas for the truck, and something I didn't expected was the tolls in Mexico, very expensive for very, very crappy roads. So you damage your vehicles, you damage your trailer, you pay a lot of money, and they charge you double because you have 2 axles on the trailer. So I did like 2,500 miles, and I think in Mexico it was about $800 US in tolls. That's crazy. You just keep paying. It was like being in the south of France in the Côte d'Azur and go from Marseille to Nice where you pay a lot. And that was Mexico, and the roads were very nasty. So anyway, about a year ago I thought about doing such a big trip. Like I said, I talked to a few people prior. Some people told me, oh, that would be interesting. And after, when I was within 6 months, I decided to talk and try to get some sponsors regarding mainly the motor, which is the big part of the expenses on that project. And I did talk to different manufacturers, and the only one that I didn't talk to is the one that came to me, which was very nice, which was Scout. But prior I was flying a Scout. They didn't want to miss the opportunity to be part of it. So myself, what I did, I just set up everything, but because I was on my own doing it, I didn't organize much. It was, I'm going to do it, I don't have to talk to anybody, I will figure out where I'm going to land, when I'm going to land, and it was very, very easy that way. But prior to the trip, I asked a lot of people to come and fly with me. I had about 16 pilots that said they will fly with me, and they said we'll meet you somewhere, and I told them you don't have to fly like I do. You don't have to fly 150 miles in one shot. You don't have to go 9,000 feet. We can go and fly together, fly lower, and when you are done with it after 50 miles, as long as you have your own ground support, you are fine. But pretty much don't come with me, because I cannot have somebody with me unless you want to do the entire trip, because if you go down I need to stop. It will be a little more of a problem. So out of the 16 I got one that came, and he flew like 2.5 hours. That's it. Another one said he will fly a little bit, and he flew with me, but that day was not a very nice day, but he was just going to come back. So really flying in one direction with me, not going back to his LZ, was only one person, which was very nice to be flying with a friend. So the trip itself was supposed to be from, well, let me go to that here. So this one right here is what I did last year in February, when I went from New Mexico and went all the way to the Salton Sea. And the trip that I was planning was to go from San Diego, from Torrey Pine Glider Pole, which is a very famous paragliding place, all the way down to Key West, fly into Cuba, and after from Cuba fly to Cancun, Mexico, and after go across the Yucatan, follow the coast of the Gulf of Mexico, go across to the Pacific, and after follow all the way to here to Los Mochis, Mexico, and I was supposed to fly into La Paz and after go back up. So all of that was 3,500 miles of flying, and out of the entire distance I drove only 60 miles. One time I had to avoid an airspace, not even airspace, it was a VFR, I could not fly there, requested by the Homeland Security, so say don't go, so I drove about 25 miles. And another one when I got to the coast back there, which is where Corpus Christi is, and they had bad weather for about 3 weeks. A lot of fog, a lot of fog, a lot of fog. If some of you follow my post, I was like, well, I cannot fly, so they had to drive inland a little bit, 20 miles, and finally go. And that's pretty much it. The entire way, I launched where I landed. And I landed where I thought it made sense to land. There's a few places where I had an idea where I was going to land, but because of distance and mainly headwind, I had to make it a little bit shorter. So pretty much you can see on my tracker that I'm going in one direction, and suddenly I go a full 90, just because I decided that I will not be able to make it to my location. And you're in the middle of a desert, and you just don't want to take the risk to have to land because you're out of gas and lose half a day or day and have to walk with so much weight on your back for more than 50, oh yeah, more than 50 yards. So the reason why I'm going to go a little bit faster, why I didn't fly into Cuba, there's many reasons. One is that, well, the main one is that I didn't get the authorization to do it when I thought it was possible. But I didn't get the authorization, I don't want to say because, but I said a factor made it that I was not be able to get it. One was that I wasn't sure I will be able to make it all the way to Key West, because it's 3,500 miles. It just takes one bad landing to hurt a finger, a toe, an ankle, a knee, a back, and after you are done. So I didn't want to go through all the process with the Cuban embassy to try to get a permit way in advance, not being sure. And the reason I didn't do it also is because some local guys from Cuba said, we'll talk to the governor for you, we'll try to make sure you can fly into the country, we should be able to make it work, but they didn't do anything apparently, so I'm not sure. So that was another one. And when I got closer, within 5 days of Cuba, I talked to the guy again. He said, well, talk to somebody else, and the somebody else said pretty much, don't even try, you will never be able to fly into Cuba. And he said, it was very interesting, he said, if you fly in illegally, probably you can. Yes, it's easy to find a car rental. It could be possible to get to the east coast, to the west coast of Cuba, but nobody will help you. So I said, okay, forget about it. I'm not going to do anything, it's too risky anyway. But the water crossing was not an issue. I was not worried about it. I had all the floaters on device. The Coast Guard were waiting for me. They were waiting in case I had an issue. I had 5 floaters on device. I had a tracking device, which is one of these personal beacon with me that I was able to use if I had to. So because I didn't fly into Cuba, I could not fly into Cancun. I was expecting the flight from Key West to Cuba to be about 2 hours and a quarter. It's only 90 miles, whatever. You get you climb a little bit, you get some tailwind, you get push. And yes, because I don't have the charger. The one from Cuba to Cancun was going to take 2.5 hours. It's like about 120 miles, but there the wind is always pushing quite hard. I was not worried about it, so that's the reason. And there was another third crossing that I was supposed to do that I didn't do because I didn't do the other 2, and I said it doesn't matter anymore. And this time I didn't do it because I was more worried about my grand crew than myself. My grand crew, which was my nephew, he was all alone, 21 years old, driving. He was just tired of the Mexican road. He said, I don't want to drive anymore, I'm done. I told him, well, when we get back to the US from California, I would drive back home. It was an extra 1,000 miles. When it was time to drive, I drove the 1,000 miles. He didn't want to drive. He said, I'm done. So the road in Mexico was complicated. So anyway, so that was the trip itself. The entry, I'm going to give you some numbers now. I flew about 200 hours. It took me 40 days to do the trip. I did some days at 2.5 hours, and after maybe the weather got bad and got too windy, my maximum speed was 132 kilometers, like 81.4 miles an hour. I did one day when I did this one, my average was about 110 kilometers an hour over 230 kilometers, so 155 miles, and that was in Louisiana. I did another one that was also fast from, and I will show you on the Fly Sky High because you will be able to see the speed, elevation, and the direction of my trip. This one I did over 80 miles an hour. And that's fast, that's very fast. But if you are 9,000 feet, it doesn't seem to be like you are fast. It doesn't really, the view of what you see, it seems like you're moving any slower or moving slower than if you were at 30 feet from the ground. So if I go to some of my trip, I'm just going to take them a little bit random. This one, 3 hours and 16 minutes. I flew 134 miles. And maximum altitude, this one was in Mexico. I didn't go very high. So anyway, for my flight I use mainly the Fly Sky High. That's what I had. That was my safety line. It gave me all the information I needed, which is very, very amazing how precise it is whenever you are flying. If you don't have something that tells you exactly where you are, you will get lost. Flying around your field is very easy. Flying to different places is very complicated. I used it, and if I go to my Fly Sky High again, and I close this one because it doesn't work, and I go to my waypoint, and I go to my my map where I had all my little, well, that's the map right here. So if I go back to the US, that's pretty much what I had when I did my trip. Again, I wish we had the map showing, but that's the way I did all my waypoint, following Fly Sky High, and I just go and just follow it. That was the main thing. So traveling with it, it was very important to deal with my elevation and speed and wind direction, as you know. So my maximum height when I flew was 9,500 feet from sea level, which is not very high, knowing that in New Mexico, when we did the Rio Grande River last year, which was a full flying along the Rio Grande River, we launched at 9,000 feet. So that's not much higher, but from sea level, it is a big long flight, it's a big high flight. There's some pictures that I'm going to show you that some people, I will get back to that later, Some people got a little bit upset of me of posting this kind of pictures, but I was in my right to do it. It was not too much of an issue. That's the kind of pictures where I flew over airliners when I was at 9,500 feet, and they were landing. Oh, here it is. They were landing. So this kind of thing happened. I saw quite a few planes effectively when I was flying. So how the journey worked out is that I'm going to stop with that because I can end the Fly Sky High work on my map. I'm going to try again, Flyberg, replay fly. Maybe it will load, maybe not, we'll see. But
You try and fix it for me. You carry on talking.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. So
So did you have any interesting collapses?
yeah. So that's part of the story. So the first flight that I did from San Diego all the way to Salton Sea, it was going to go over a big mountain. And unfortunately that night they got snow in the mountains. So that's one of the time where I got extremely cold. I had a lot of layers on me, about 11 layers on my body, 3 there, and heated gloves, and that was barely enough. When I landed that day I was very, very cold. So that was a short flight of 90 miles. It took me 2 hours and a quarter. People were expecting and waiting for me. No, maybe it will load, we'll see. After the fact that I was doing and I was on the long cross country, before I started my trip, I motivated a bunch of people when we were around the Salton Sea in, well, what I can do is go to map this time. That lake right here that you can see is the Salton Sea. That's one of the very famous or important paramotor gathering in February. And this location is minus 223 feet below sea level. So myself, I flew from San Diego and I went across by the town of Ramora, which is a little town that we don't see here yet. Well, it doesn't, it's right here, it shows right there. And after I went across and I landed at the lake, which is right here. But anyway, I was just going to say that for many years a lot of pilots wanted to do the cross country around the lake, which is about 100 miles, and people always talked about doing, but they never did it. And I thought, well, you know, I'm on my little journey. I'm going to land on Salton Sea. I'm going to stay there for the event for 3 or 4 days, and I would like to go around the lake. That will be part of my journey. Who is going to follow? And I got about 30 pilots interested about doing it, and I think about 16 of them did it. And we had set up a fuel stop on the other side, which not us, but they all organized their own grand crew. We all met on the other side and did and finished the entire trip. So the fact that I was doing that big trip and I was telling people, oh, let's do a little thing together, that pushed people to go outside of their comfort zone and do something else. And most of these people never flew more than 40 miles, and suddenly they go and to do 100 miles, which was good. It was very interesting. After, from there, I went toward Yuma. I went toward the Glamis Dune, which is the biggest sand dune in America, where you see a lot on Facebook, people flying around this dune, which is very, very beautiful. And that's where that little video that you saw earlier came from. When I was there, I decided to film for a friend of mine that came with his sand buggy, the kind that you don't see too much in Europe. Very, very powerful. And what I did, I followed him for about 2 hours, and I filmed with my camera mounted on the gimbal, and my nephew that was filming me during the trip was in the car with him. So it was a little bit of mix of car and paramotors. So my deal was to kind of keep turning and try to follow him, which was not very easy for the gimbal to track and follow and stay level. But that was a fun little break in between the long distance. The trip itself was very interesting because I didn't really know what to expect regarding the weather, and knowing that whenever you are flying such a long distance, you know where you are launching from, you know what kind of weather pattern you have at that specific time, but you are not sure and you don't know 2 hours or 3 hours later what you are going to get at landing. So it's always a gamble. So I did this one time again. I wish the Fly Sky High was working. but there's a time when I was flying in Texas from a place that is called Van Horn, and I was going in the direction of a little town it's called Alpine, and I told my nephew, well, I'm going to fly from here to that Alpine town, and I'm going to land at the little local airport because they were one. But when I got closer to it, I was flying so fast, I said, I'm going fast, why should I stop now? So I said, I'm going to go to the next town, and the next town was about 40 miles away, and I did get to the next town in 20 minutes. I went down, that's maybe the one of this day where I was flying low, but I was going 70 miles an hour. And I was flying 1,000 feet from the ground. That never happened, you know. 80 miles an hour if you are 9,000 feet, it feels fine. There it did feel very good, but I was very low to the ground, so you can imagine how much wind was at landing. So that was an interesting thing. No, I didn't have any issue, but you have to be ready. You have to be ready for any eventuality. So that was part of interesting flight on the speed. I got some days, again, I wish I could show it, but I cannot, where flying in Texas, where I launched, and this time it was the reversed. I could not go high because the wind was like what you got 2 days ago, where if you climb a little bit, you just park and you don't move. And if you have to do 60 miles or 50 miles in one direction, and there's nowhere where anybody can bring you fuel because you're in the middle of nowhere, you want to try to keep moving. And keep moving, I was trying to stay at 60 miles an hour, 16 miles an hour. So I had to fly very low to the ground, and very low, more than what I would like, because it was very windy, it was about noon, a lot of thermals, and that was very, very, very bumpy. And when you start to get some little deflation, collapses so close to the ground, it doesn't feel very good. So in that trip, I got about 40 collapses, 40 deflation, but 6 of them were pretty big, where it feels like you're in the SIV clinic, where you suddenly start to go, whoa, and you see the ground and you recover and you see the sky, you're like, okay, that was pretty intense. So that was about 6 of them. 2 of them were very close to the ground. They were not as intense as the rotation, but you can really feel that collapse, where you have a time even to see that wingtip and it's fully closed. It's not very friendly, it's not very nice when you're so close to the ground. And I got maybe an extra 8 or 10 that were medium size, and an extra 20 that were very small. When I crossed the distance from Yuma and went across, sorry, not Yuma, from another place, and I went toward around Tucson, Arizona. There were a lot of clouds. They were all close together with that little nice little white halo in between, and every time I was going from cloud to cloud, I was getting bumped around for 2.5 hours. And I could not go too high, I could not go above the cloud, they were too high. I could not go any higher because it was very cold, it was still February. And that's some of the day where you are like, oh, I wish I was on the ground. But again, you don't really stop and you keep going. You still feel safe, but you feel very tired from the intensity of having your 2 arms piloting that wing. So from time to time you have to think and you have to tell yourself, that's enough, I cannot hold it anymore. So you just have to let one hand go, relax a little bit for 10-15 seconds, and you know, just I should be fine, and suddenly you switch and you drop the other one and you rest just enough to be able to keep going.
So what wing were you using?
3G, oh sorry, so the motor I was using a Scout Paramotor, and I had an 18-liter fuel tank, and the wing I was using a Roadster 3 22 meters. When I did my cross country, when I carried all that weight the first time, I was using a 24 meter. This time, because the ground crew, hey, is loading. The map is loading, that's good. When I did that trip, because I had a ground crew, I was going to carry less weight. So I decided 22 will be fine. In the US, I only flew with 18 liters. When I got to Mexico, I was 28 liters.
When it was rough, did you have the trims in or trims out?
I had the trims out all the time. I let it just full reflex, which was very interesting sometime, because again, when you fly like you are doing here most of the time, if you get rough, you land and you are done. For me, the idea was to try to find as much wind as possible in our elevation. So most of you pilots maybe are using that Windy app. All of you know about it, and for that trip it was 95% accurate. So I mainly looked through different layers of altitude. When I could see the purple, like the 50-60 miles an hour, to me was like good. It's going to push me on the right direction, and that's why I was able to go sometimes so fast. Yes, sir.
You got your deflations. Were you in fast trim?
Yeah, it was fully
trimmed out.
Yeah, fully trimmed out.
Using the brakes to still pump.
Yeah, I just pump it a little bit. I just let the wing fly. That's what I did. So prior that trip, or even 2 years prior, I did the SIV clinic. And for any person that wants to go longer fly and want to try to do some cross country, I will recommend to do it, because it will give you some confidence and it will make you understand that the wing wants to fly. It's all about that. The wing wants to fly. It would take a lot for the wing to collapse and drop from the sky. It would take a lot, and that was the proof. I have a little video that I had out there on Facebook where it shows where I got 3 deflation in about 45 seconds. You see one side closing, the other one, because I had the GoPro on my knee looking straight above, and during this 7 minutes movie you see that I'm just permanently moving left and right, and I was high. I was maybe at 6,000 feet, but there, because the ground altitude was maybe 3,000 feet, but I couldn't go any higher because I was cold. It's kind of a mix of being cold, speed, wind direction for sure, and thermal. But what I was going to say earlier is that many times it happened to me, mainly in Mexico, that I was very smooth at 3,000 feet, 4,000 feet. Okay, it's time to land. So I find a place, which many times I decided at the last minute. So my nephew was able to track me and find me, but I had an idea where I wanted to go. I said, well, I assume that I will be able to do 140 miles, for example. I'm going to follow the beach again in Mexico, but there's a time where it's a lot faster for me to get to you than you come to me. So after a while I had to say, okay, I need to go inland and get to that LZ, and the LZ will be soccer field, track and field, side of the road. It would be some kind of interesting places like that. But you are flying, and all of you knows when thermals start to build up, when you go through it, where you get bounced around, and you land and you are fine and safe, and you get something to eat, you refuel gas, but you have to go back, and now it's 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And twice I saw some dust devil, which you get a lot back there before launching, and they were right next to me. They were within 50 yards from me. So you kind of assume and hope there will be none when you are going to launch again. And you have to keep moving. You cannot say, oh, I saw a dust devil, and what am I going to do? Am I going to wait till next morning? You can't do that. But for about 3,000 feet it was pretty bumpy, but you know you have to go back to it or through it. And that was interesting, because you reset up, you just get ready, you get pumped up, you said, okay, I'm going to go, and for about 2,000 feet you're just like very tense. You are ready for any kind of eventual collapses, and suddenly it gets smoother and smoother and smoother. It's like, okay, now we can relax. Very interesting. So this one loaded here, which is nice. This one was San Diego. What I did, I just went around the airspace, and you will be able to see there, you know, apparently I was 10 feet over ground, but I was more like 100 feet on this one there. And I just went around the airspace and follow this one, and as I go I keep climbing. I went around this one because I didn't want to go too high to avoid it, and I keep climbing, and you see the speed 57, 53, 60, 62, 62, 64. You see all of that, you speed as I climb, as I get over that Borrego Desert State Park mountain there, 73, 70, 80 miles an hour. And there I was I was almost 8,000 feet already above ground, but I was, sorry, altitude, I was only 3,000 feet above ground. So there I keep going, and the speed just stayed pretty consistent for a long time. And after you slow down and you just land minus 223 feet. So that was an interesting flight. It was an easy flight. So the idea of that trip was to motivate people, or what is the right word, to what? Inspire. Thank you very much. To inspire a pilot to do some trip that way, because everything is possible. I tell people, if you go a group like a 2 or 3 pilot and you get 1 driver, just go for 2 days, meaning 3 days and 2 nights. You go somewhere, point A to point B, you can do 1 big loop. It's kind of interesting. It's not for everybody. The difference for me is that at that specific trip, the wind at ground level is whatever direction you want it to be at that time. But when you go a higher elevation, most of the time the wind is going to push, at least in the US or anywhere in the world. It's pretty much pushing from west to east. So I was able to get some nice push, which was very good. If I go to another one, for example, I don't know, I'm just going to pick this one right here. Let's see if the map is going to load maybe in a little while. Hopefully it will. So I got a lot of people that were very pleased and to be able to follow that trip and see what it was, and that I survived the trip. There was one guy in the US that betted that in crossing the water I will not make more than 60 miles. I think he said 64 miles. That was Antonio Villa. I told him, bastard. Well, I was not able to prove that, but when I flew along Key West, for example, I have some nice pictures I'll show you later. The trip was all above water. I was 1,000 feet above water, and I kind of make it a point that if I had an engine out, I will not be able to reach land because it's too far from me. But in Key West, I didn't really have any specific floaters on device except the one on my motor, but I didn't worry about it too much because there were a lot of boats around there just playing around. I thought if I have a problem, I'll just land next to a boat and they will come and help me. That was my idea. The trip, there were a few places where effectively you think I should not be there, not at that specific place, because there's danger. A lot of danger everywhere, but some of them is like, the issue will be I land here, it's going to take them or him like a day to get back to me, but I will be okay. It's just some walking. In the entire trip, I didn't see too many trees. It's mainly dry, desert, and some high altitude flying. And after, when you get to the coast, which by the way, that was pretty much when I reached Corpus Christi, that was my first beach flying ever, which was nice. Suddenly it was like, oh, that's nice and smooth. Let's see this one, because this one loaded. Let's see what I did on this one here. Part of it loaded. Well, this one was a flight that follow pretty much the Mexican border, because you can see that gray line on the side there. Oop. The gray line on the side is the Rio Grande River, which is the Mexican border. So this one you see most of the time at 6,000 feet above ground, 5,000. And on this one, I was hoping to go a little bit further. Let me see. Oh no, that's the one I remember. That's what I was talking about earlier. I was at 6,000 feet. I was going just fine, and I realized that I was going to not have enough fuel to reach my destination, and that's why I decided to go straight right and land on the road where my nephew could get me. So that was a last minute decision. I had to do it. Otherwise, I was going to go in straight line and I will be landing in a wrong place. If I go to another one, so that's the one. This one is a few times I got cut off on my Fly Sky High, and I reset up right away. But this one is when I flew in this one I was already in Louisiana, and you can see when I restarted my Fly Sky High, I was already going 71 miles an hour, and I was 8,000 feet above ground just about. So there, same thing, I just stay, and I went way above that airspace. I didn't go toward the center. This one was a much lower airspace right here. This one here, that is showing you the airspace on the Fly Sky High in the US. As long as I was over 4,200 feet, I was okay on this one there. So, but right here, I decided on this one that was interesting, because you have to take some decision at the last minute, and the decision on this one was do I follow the road and stay closer to the road, or do I go across that water? And the water, as you can see, water crossing was 10 miles across. And my decision was, well, I'm flying at 70 miles an hour, going 10 miles across. I'm 8,000 feet. If I have an issue, I will be able to glide down and reach land without any problem. But so I decided to go across it, and that's the one where I did my. Can you see the average there is going 77, 77, 78, 80. That was my maximum speed ever of 81.4 miles an hour. And when I was talking to somebody here, or yesterday, I thought, oh shoot, should I try to see my speed with a speed bar? I didn't think about using the speed bar. Would have been interesting to see what it would have brought me at. But that's what I got. Again, a lot of wind. It was very windy at landing on this one, but it happened to be just fine. So it's pretty much one story after the other regarding wind, regarding LZs. The people that were the most interested about me flying or about me landing will be in Mexico. I landed in some villages where I got, well, what I can do is show you some pictures that I put on the side earlier for you. So that was for sure the logo for the trip. That was the map that I had on my trailer with all the sponsors that were involved. So Esquisse is a clothes manufacturer, and they sponsor half of the wing. So, and they work with Ozone. So Ozone helped me with half of it, and Esquisse helped me with half of it. So there's a person that you know very well, most of you, is Matt Mignard. You heard of him, maybe. And he told me something very interesting. He told me, well, it's always hard to go to a sponsor if the person you're asking money or to help you with some equipment, they don't know you. It's always better to do a trip that is different first, and after, when they know you, now if you request to get some sponsorship, you will get more chances to get some help regarding your trip and your adventure. So anyway, yeah, that was very interesting what he said. So on the trip, we had the Adventure Wingman on the right. I don't know if any of you heard about them. It is a company that's starting to help incoming adventurers that have good ideas, and they want to help them financially. Myself, they help me with the engine, but help financially, which is you have a great idea, you want to go and fly to the Mont Blanc with your paramotor, and you want to find somebody that can fly with you and film for you, and it's going to cost 500 euro. Put your project together, we'll give you 500 euro, and you can do your project. So the Adventure Wingman is a company that was created by Scout Paramotor and Team Fly Hello. Both companies put some money into that specific company, and their next project apparently is going to be financing Army veterans toward training and flying paramotor. That was part of the next project, I think. So that was the Adventure Wingman. Vittorazzi helped me with the MY19 engine, which flew 200 miles, 6,000 miles, sorry, without any issue. So really big thanks to them, because it was very helpful. The Glider Sport, which is one of the big part dealer company in the US, helped me with parts in case I needed it. And after, we have Skyport USA help me with helmets. I got some helmets, and Senna helped me with some equipment, thinking that I was going to use this helmet for guest pilot that were going to fly with me, but that didn't have their shit together with their equipment for communication. And I thought that way, if they fly with me, we'll be able to communicate right away with new helmets. So Skyport USA helped me with this. And one time I got issue with my wing. I got a little cut in the wing from a rudder. When I launched, the wing went up properly. I was just starting to run, and the wing came back straight at me, and I did a little cut. So I got that Air Toys company right there that helped me in fixing my wing as soon and as fast as they could. So I got my wing back in a week, which was very nice. So that was for the sponsors. Well, that was me happy. I guess. That was with my nephews when we were in New Mexico prepping the trailer, getting the boxes ready, putting the sign. Before we left, there was snow. That's the trailer that came with us to the trip. It got bounced around quite a bit. Prepping the trailer, more prepping. That was just before we left on the trip. Driving cross country. That's the rig we took across for 6,000 miles. Overhead camper on the truck. Just fine to sleep, all three of us. Putting the logo together. That was my old motor and the new motor right here put together. I had a spare motor, a spare frame in case I had an issue to be able to fly. Scout Paramotor. That was the morning of my first launch when I decided to fly. So from California, San Diego, and that was the. I was ready for the big cold. I knew they had that snow. We assumed when I was flying at 9,000 feet, about 6,000 feet above that snowy peak there, that it was going about, and we assumed it was about minus 10 to 12 degrees Celsius. It was very cold that day. So that was getting ready, flying, leaving the coast. That's the California coast, going around the buildings. That's the first snow coming, shaping up, and my shoes were good shoes for every day, not for cold. I was ready for it, so I put a trash bag in my shoes to just prevent a little bit of the cold. So that was crossing the mountains. That was just happy guy, I guess, landing. That was going and flying around the Salton Sea. Sponsorship from the guys. That was the person right here that flew with me. That section 60 miles, so from the Salton Sea all the way to Glamis Dune. That was his first cross country. So in October this year we're going to do another trip that will be interesting. We're going to fly the entire length of the Colorado River. So this time the difference is that there will be about 15 to 20 pilots. A lot of them like to do YouTube videos, so this one will be talked about quite a bit, I assume. So anyway, I was saying that because that guy wants to participate. Jason is a movie guy, where this one you recognize. That's when we got ready for the big crossing. So that's the first time, because before this one I did two stops, one at the Salton Sea, one at Glamis, and after from there I went toward Yuma. And that was my only first short flight, 30 miles. I left late the desert of Glamis, and that's what happened. When I arrived, I just packed my wing, get my shit together, put everything clean, call my nephew and tell them where I landed, that's where I am, and I just wait for them to arrive. So that's after packing up everything. That's some of the bad weather that I went pretty much through when I was flying around the south. I was able to dodge into it because you can see my dot where I was at that day in Yuma. So I was able to get some good weather. I don't know, some of you know that guy's there, Anthony Vela, famous paramotor podcast man, a little crazy, a little wild, fun. This guy here is very interesting. You just land on the truck stop, and here you get a guy that says, where are you coming from? Oh, I came and I'm flying from San Diego into Key West. Oh, can I have a picture with you, please? It was just a guy that was parked on the side of the truck. Nephews. This guy right here helped me to dry my wing. That was in Texas, because they had so much fog, so much moisture. As you were flying that day when I went from one side of Texas to another one following the coast, my shield on my helmet was getting wet just from fog and condensation. My wing was totally wet. I landed that night. It was dark when I landed. It was not that fun. So anyway, we put the wing in his hanger to try to dry it. That's the fog I was talking about right here. We could not see anything. Crossing, first little water crossing over waterways, sorry. That's the way I mounted my GoPro. So I brought here what I was using with me for my camera. if one day you're interested about flying with a DSLR camera, that's what I put over my shoulders. And I connect my camera right here, so I flew the entire 6,000 miles with that. It's easy access. How many of you are flying with the right throttle, meaning the right hand throttle, and who is flying with the left one? You are flying left, because I was flying left once upon a time. Sorry, I was flying with my right once upon a time, and I switched to the left because I'm right-handed. So with my right hand, I can play with my phone, I can do all of this, and I can use my camera. So this one is just a little quarter turn. That's it. So the camera doesn't come out. So it stays here all the time. I had my 10 liter fuel bladder. I had my pack at me at launch, and it was not bothering me. So it's nice because you just quarter turn, you get your camera, take your pictures, put it back, and it's very safe. If you happen to lose it, well, you just taser it, but that's the best way, I think, to carry one of these cameras. So I had this one on me, and that's the bag that I use all the time. That was made by Scout Paramotor for cross country. It works very, very well because you can put water, you can put your tracking device, and if you go for like a day or two, you can put your sleeping bag in it, you can put some food and keep your tent on the side. But this one works very well. A lot of people, when they do the Icarus race, they have a tendency to launch and with duffel bags. And duffel bags goes here, and when you run it just keeps bouncing on your legs. That's not very nice. It doesn't really help. So this one I connected right here to the ground to my swing bars, and when I launch I get this one and I connect it to a little clip that I have on my harness, and as soon as I launch, the first time I connected both sides and it's too difficult to unhook, so after I connect just one side, and when you're in the air you just drop it, it goes on your legs, and you have what you need. So I have a little hole here to put my water bladder to drink. Inside here I keep my phone. Here it goes. I keep my phone that is Velcro here, and I got my charger line that goes through it, and here I have my tracker. I got extra gloves, I got extra jacket if I need to, I carry my wing bag. So this thing works very well. Duffel bag doesn't really work well. It's not as easy, it's not as convenient. And if one day you want to carry a camera, that's what I recommend. It's a very good system. What I had done on this one, I connected the GoPro pole through these clips right here, and I could extend it, I could rotate the camera, and it was filming. I could get film myself, I could lift it up a little bit, I could film the wing. I didn't film much because it was 6,000 miles and I got tired of it. So I only took a few pictures, but that's why the camera is on the bag right here. Water crossing, that's my very primitive cruise control that I have right here. It's just a piece of string that was going inside the throttle housing and going around the throttle handle, and that was keeping the throttle working properly. So what is interesting when you fly long distance and using the Windy app is that you have an idea that certain elevation the wind is going to push you up fully, or you're going to get headwind, but you want to try to stay at the right elevation to get the speed you want. And when you have cruise control, when you fly for so long, it's hard to keep your elevation. So yes, the trip was 6,000 miles, yes, it was 200 hours, but I was very busy doing things. You have phone calls, you have Facebook, you have Messenger, but mainly you have all the tracking. So you keep checking at your altitude, your speed, and as soon as it was very interesting because on such a trip, many times I was like, you're doing something and you're like, oh, why am I so cold? It's because you climbed. And you said, oh shoot, I should be going lower. Or why am I getting warm? Oh, it's because you went too low. So you spend a lot of time using that Fly Sky High app to try to track your elevation and direction. What I was saying is that with the cruise control, even if you are set up in function of the air density, you just keep going up and down. So you have to keep tracking, you have to keep moving all the time, your hands. That was in Texas, flying over the clouds. That was some guy that I met in Texas. This one here, I flew that day, but the cloud ceiling height was only 300 feet. I had to stay very low. As soon as you climb a little bit, you get that moisture coming at you, and I was only flying at 20 miles an hour. It was headwind. I didn't go very far, but I still went for it. Flying over clouds, that's over Texas. This one, now right there, you are already near or next to, you're already in Louisiana, so that's already gator country. That's what I want to say. So any kind of water inlet there, you assume there's already gators. So that was part of the danger. I was talking about danger last time, which was flying near the Everglades, which was pretty risky. So you have to land on the road. Flying around that part of Louisiana, which is very dangerous because of the gators also, and flying in Mexico in one place where I was pretty much middle of nowhere, it would have been a big deal. We assume it will be a big deal to have a prime there. The only way to get you out is with an helicopter, I assume. So when you get there, that picture, what is interesting is that for me, it was time to land. So there's only one road. On the left side is swamp, on the right side is kind of swamp too. So I follow that road most of the time, but I looked at all this field, and again, I just don't know where I'm going to land. I just have to tell my nephew when I landed, okay, I'm here, just come and get me. But I kind of look at places. If the house is too nice, I decided not to land. If the grass seems to be too high, I decided not to land. If I see cows, I don't want to land. So I just keep going and keep going. I thought at one time I was going to land on this one right here, on the one that has the tree right here. And I thought, I'm not sure. And I looked at the one to the right, and I thought, no, that looks wet, but there was cows also. So I thought, no, I'm just going to keep going. And I ended up to be landing more like on that bigger one back there. And this one was interesting because I landed, and before landing I had to do it twice because I got a little headwind to land, so I had to reset. But I could see somebody was waiting for me as there's somebody that's going to flying over my head, is going to land. So I landed. The guy came to me, and he was the sheriff. He was the local sheriff, and he was very, very nice. He said, well, you landed on my own call property, but where are you coming from? So when you start to tell him the story, suddenly it's like, it's magic. And he was like almost retired, 65 years old. And we talked for a little while, waiting for my grand crew to arrive. And he said, where are you sleeping tonight? I said, well, I don't know, we're going to sleep in a van somewhere. Can we stay there? He said, no, just come to my house and you can sleep right here, we'll be safe. And next day you can launch from my place. That'll be fine, or the same place where you landed. And I said, great. So that was very, very nice. So I kept going on this one. That's Matt Mignard, for whoever knows him. This one here was very interesting because I landed in that soccer field, and the trees were very high, and these big lights went even higher. The trees were maybe, I don't know, like 60 feet tall. This one was a tough one. That's the only time I tried 3 times to reset. I reset, and I ended up to be finishing very close to the fence when I finished my... Some of you must know that guy, that's Jeff Goen, the one that has that book there. I landed at his property, invited me. Very, very nice. We spent the night at his place because that afternoon it was too windy. That's flying over the Everglades. Now we start to see all the water, all the swamp right there. They're hard to see, but that's all. All this little thing is all water. That's the visor I use. So my visor has a black line, as you can see above, and I mainly use it for sun visor. When it's down all the way to here, the black, which is electrical tape, doesn't bother me to see out. But whenever it's sunny, I keep moving it a lot and use it as a sun block. I never get the sun in my face. I can move it, and it's very important when you fly long distance. You go in one direction and you get this sunrise or the sunset right on your face. Not very fun. So all of that is getting closer to Miami. And I will show you this one, where this one we talked about it earlier. I saw a lot of them landing below me. We spent, with a friend of mine, we spent 45 minutes to try to figure out if I was legal to do it, and it's pretty amazing that I knew I was legal to fly there. I was way above the airspace as a FAR 103. pilot, the regulation, the exemption, make me that I could fly above without having any beacon. And I saw the American airline plane landing. So what is interesting is hard to see on that picture, maybe on the screen, but all of that here that you see is all water. And that's the Everglades. That's where they go and hunt crocodiles for fun, apparently. And now we are getting into Key West. And I just went across again. If I had issued there, I could maybe land on a little island, but I decided to go straight. Key West was a beautiful flight. I guess I was the first one to go from West Coast to East Coast, flying a paramotor. Flying over Key West. This one was interesting. You can see that little spot right here. That was my LZ. So it's very, very tiny. But I thought there's somebody I know, Tucker God, that fly Key West a few times. I call him and I email to him. I say, text him, message to him, and I say, where should I land? What is the best spot? But he launched in a specific place, which is a fine place to land, but it was a little bit too far away for the ground crew. And I saw this one. I thought, well, I'm going to go to this one. So this one was another funny story also, because I went around one. I didn't go around the LZ once, but I went around to set up myself for the proper landing, and I landed right where that little bridge is, and I went in direction of the LZ. I landed just fine. Within 5 minutes, the cops came to me and they said, oh, pretty much, oh, you're okay, we got an emergency call saying a skydiver crash landed behind the bushes. So that was me. So they were interested again. They asked me a question. I told them what I was doing, but I had to stop here because after I could not go any further. After it was Key West airspace, and so I stopped right there. So there's the cops on the background back there. They went just to check around, make sure nobody was already dead. Another plane, another one. So in Mexico, that was interesting to be able to communicate and see all these kids very interested about what you were doing. Every time I was landing near a soccer field and they were at some sport event. Interesting because that was their trainer, very small guy. Mexico, flying along the coast in Mexico. So flying the coast, which for sure was very easy, very nice. That gives you an idea about what I did when I went back inland to get gas. I just followed the coast for a little while, and after I went inland and get my gas. Another place, this one was very much of a lost village. They were not too far from a main road, but still, nobody has shoes back there. They don't have washing machine, for sure not. They were all happy to be posing for the picture, which was nice. This one was also an interesting place. It was a tiny little truck stop behind walls. And you see the power line right here that is above. I had to reset twice. And when I landed, because the distance to land in this space is from here to the bleachers back there, or the music stand. So I need to make sure that I was very, very close to the power line to get my landing going. Again, the guy was there, was security guard. He saw me landing. He's like, where is this guy coming from? Next day I had to launch from the same place. More kids, different location. Middle of nowhere. Resting, waiting for the ground guys, the ground crew. Another group of people following the beach in Mexico. This one was interesting because as soon as I got to that location, after I didn't have any more LZ, there's a little few sand beaches, but not too many of them. And I was like, okay, if you have an engine out, where are you going to land? There's not really road, there's not really beaches, so you just hope for the best. Landing on the side of the beach. This one was a nice picture, following, meaning crossing that boat. It was on a little channel. Mexico. This one was Acapulco. More kids landing on the beach. Trailer. Oh yeah, this one here, I was feeling confident that my engine was fine. And I ended up to be, while I was flying Mexico, I saw maybe 6 places with surfing zone where the tourists come just to surfing camp. So they were all there surfing, and I thought, well, I've been alone for 2 hours and I'm going to loop around. So I went down and I did 2 turn around. I didn't have an engine out, so I was okay. There's a lot of surfing zone like that. You can see them, all the surfer. You go from no civilization to suddenly car park, fishing boats. So really flying the coast of Mexico was very nice, the west coast. Didn't feel any issue with any of the local. The only problem is that sometimes it's difficult to get the gas because the car will have a hard time to get to you. But it was a very nice, safe flight, I would say. This one is very interesting. Right up is pretty much the Mexican-US border. But on this one I thought, well, I went across, my nephew was going to be on that main road, and I thought, okay, where am I going to land? And I thought, am I going to land on the dirt spot on the right, on the one on the left? But there were a fence, and I thought I'm not going to land there. So on this one, I just decided to land. That's the only time I landed right on the road. I landed right on that little parking spot next to the toll. Now we drove to go to the other side, to go into the USA, and relaunched on the other side.
You have to stop at the border.
Yeah, we stopped before the border, we crossed the border with the truck. Yeah, that would be a problem. Coming in, I guess it will be okay. Coming out, it will be a little more difficult. This one here, you can see the US-Mexico border. That's the wall right here, with some of the water coming out of the Colorado River. So anyway, just a few things like that. So do you have any questions?
Would you do it again?
Will I do it again? Not this one. Will I do something like that again? Why not? With the ground support, you feel very safe. You don't feel any issue. But will I do it again alone? No. It's fun. It was fine. It was no problem. The good thing by going alone is that you don't have to worry about the other guys. You go at your own speed. When we did last year, we did the Rio Grande adventure. That was supposed to be about 1900 miles of flying. We ended up to be flying about 1100 miles. But we flew as a group. We were about 9 to 13 of us flying, and we flew together. So at that time, I pretty much call it the longest paramotor trip ever flown as a group in one direction. So the Colorado River will be the next one, pretty much. But I think Parajet, the one they did in Maldives, was a pretty big flight too, but it was a lot of shorter flight. They didn't fly in one direction. There was a loop staying in one place. So the Colorado River is going to be very good. So anyway, what I was saying when you fly alone, you don't have to spend your time going around and looking around to see if the other guy, where's the other guy. So being alone was a very, very good for that specific reason. But unfortunately, you don't have any people taking pictures of you. You don't take pictures of people. You don't have that camaraderie when you land and say, hey, it was great, like I did with Fred Jason. We landed and slapped hands, and it was very good. 6,000 miles went pretty fast. Some people ask me, were you tired after it? I said, no, I could keep going an extra month, 2 months. It doesn't matter. You're on the groove as long as you don't have any issue. It's true that sometimes you're thinking, oh, I wish I was on the ground, mainly because when it was rough. I would say I got pretty lucky with the weather. I didn't get any real bad weather. When it was foggy and cloudy in Texas, it was still not a bad weather. When I got the wind pushing me in the right direction, which was okay. So yeah, I'll do another 2,000 miles, 3,000 miles without any problem. Now is a lot of time out of your life. 40 days, that was like 3 months trip, just about 40 days of flying. I spent some time in some paramotor events. I spent about 10 days in paramotor events, stopping along the way. And so yeah, I think the hardest part was mainly the sun. Yeah, so that's why I was trying to stay covered most of the time, get my visor down, and luckily with the phone you have all that communication you can do. You can call people, you can share, which is very good. So it was very interesting. Yeah. So will any of you will do? Did any of you did more than 60 miles flying paramotor?
I've done 900 miles in 9 days.
900 miles in 9 days.
But that was 9 years ago. I attempted to fly around Britain, but it was a long time.
And so how many of you?
Me.
Oh, just you. So you did the same thing, just on your own.
Yeah.
And
Me and my wife. She probably
she was driving.
Yeah. She had the harder part. She didn't know whether I was still alive or not. I at least knew I was still alive.
But she could not track you at that time?
We did, but the tracker really was relatively, a long time ago. They weren't terribly.
They were not as good.
No, and yeah, sometimes I'd tell her where I was, sometimes it'd be 14 miles, sometimes it'd be 100 miles.
Yeah, because sometimes for you it's like, well, I could keep going a little bit further because why should I stop? I get a nice tailwind and I still have some fuel.
Yeah.
900 miles, that's good, that's very good. And it's nice when you don't have to carry too much weight.
We had a 21-day window and there's only 9 actual flying days. If we're really being honest, probably 8 of those 9 days we shouldn't have flown, but you do what you do.
Well, it's because you live at the wrong place. Sorry, guys. You know, for the Colorado River that is going to come, Colorado River is going to be first launch is at 8,000 feet. I'm assuming that at that time of the year we should have 8 days of good weather out of 8 days, hopefully. Hopefully, but I'm putting it over 9 days.
You don't get 8 days of good weather in the round.
No, here no. But in Mexico, I was very surprised to get such of a nice weather. Yeah, and I could almost, what I should do is show you a few more because they were kind of interesting. If I close this one and I go to, I don't know, let's get this one 3 hours, let's see what this one was. I didn't put any date. This one was already in Mexico. Oh, that's the big one. That's the one where half of that flight I was like, I should not be there because what was below me. So the first part was this one was 155 miles I think in 2.5 hours because I was going about 50 miles an hour the entire, maybe it was 3 hours, I don't know what let me see, that's easy. It was 3 hours and I did 146 miles on this one. That's what it's showing right here. And maximum altitude 7,000 feet. But let's go back to it. Replay the flight. All of that, the beginning was all farmland and it was beautiful. It was just fine. And after it's starting to shape some clouds, and I didn't see that I was going to fly over this forest right here. And it was not that far. It was only 5-10 miles away from the big forest, but that was really pretty impressive. It was really jungle. That was jungle. This one was no roads whatsoever that I could see between the clouds opening. I didn't like it, but you can see my speed was 55, it was 62 when I got closer to landing, 60 miles an hour. And that's one of the time where I went through the layers to be landing, and I got a big collapse like 1,000 feet from the ground just before landing. And it was extremely windy landing. I was not very proud of myself. It was okay again. Again, it was a nice big field. I had no issue, but it was not very nice. So who is interested in doing some long distance, like 200 miles? Downwind helps. Downwind helps. Yeah, I always tell people just get that motivation, get a driver and just do it for like 3 or 4 days. What I would like to do myself is take my motor, my camping gears and just go up to the top of the mountain and go camping with like 3 or 4 people.
See the guy in America that capped on top of the buttes or mesas, land on the top, but you can't get up there.
On the top of what?
Butte or mesa, the big hills with flat tops.
Oh, some mesa.
Yeah, mesa, yeah.
Yeah.
You just land on the top, camp for the night. It's great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, it's fun. It's fun. So it will be interesting to track down the Colorado River, October 4th. It will be on Facebook, so more likely. And there's four of you from England more likely coming. There's the Alex. What is his name is? Yeah, he said he was coming, and his friend Jake something, more likely. Yeah, the American, exactly, is coming, and Julie's maybe coming to be a ground crew, and another guy that take videos for Parajet, Steve Thomas. He said he was interested in coming and filming the trip. because there we're going to get some amazing scenery, very amazing scenery. It's going to be beautiful. So hopefully you will follow and get more motivation to travel.
Good stuff on YouTube.
Mine, not much. Mine, I don't have anything on YouTube. I didn't do much.
But then you don't.
No, I should do it, but I don't want to have to deal with it. I'm lazy. I take pictures, but so otherwise, if I go back to some of the pictures, this one here, the last one, this one was very nice. My nephew filmed this one. That was in Mexico. I landed and I arrived there about 3 hours before them, and I had to walk. I thought that was a place where the road was not too far from the coast, and it was about 500 yards, so I just landed right there, and I left all my equipment on the beach, and I walked to the street, which is more on that side to the main road, and we walked with the gas, refill the gas. My nephew said, I'm going to film, so he took the drone out. This one was coconut trees plantation. So usually I just take off and I go in one direction, but he was there. So okay, I'm going to turn around. They're going to film it. It was nice. There's a guy living there. So that's it. I was gone.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Well, anyway. Well, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a nice little interesting stuff.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you were able to do something like that.
Yeah,
To meet you. Yeah, I hope so.
Very good.
Have you flown Africa at all?
I was there at the Icarus race,
All right.
but I got some issue with the piston on this one. So
What do you do about peeing in flight?
never, no breakfast, no,
peeing in flight.
yeah, no break. No, I don't do that. No,
See?
no breakfast, no tea before launching. Yeah, not
You get dehydrated.
not for me.
Dehydrated.
Yeah, but after when I was flying, I just drink. I was okay, but it's mainly before launch.
Bladder.
Yeah, that's maybe what it is. Because 3-4 hours, no problem.